shot him right in the head. His wife was there with two little babies that I believe they were twins, but I'm not sure. And they pushed her down the stairs to trucks that were waiting to pick up all the Jews. She's tried to get on the truck and she couldn't. German soldier pushed her up there and she's sitting in the truck with her two little babies. This German officer comes up and he says, "Madame, you cannot take two children. You can only take one child." And she said, "Monsieur Silver, what's the matter? These are my children. You just shot my husband. This is all I have left. They're staying with me." And the officer, in all his dress uniform, looked smartly at her and said, "You have choices, madame. You can either throw one of the children to us, or I can shoot all of you right here." What was she going to do? What can anybody do? I think from what I understood from my father, she lost her mind pretty much at that moment, which is understandable. She took both children and threw them out. We didn't know what happened with her till way after the war. What turned out was that she was sent to Buchenwald. She spent the war years over there. I don't know how she survived. My parents, after we came here in 1945, I think around 1950s, my parents heard that she was alive and somehow or other got to America and she was in New York and they had visited with her. Of course, nothing was ever the same, not for any of us, but certainly not for her. And that was her story. And that tells you what we were up against and what's happened for the next 4.5 years. Anyhow, we're on the road constantly. And we hear that a lot of Belgians who are of army age would not be allowed to go through any borders. I had a cousin, Benny Dimmenstein's father was also a diamond dealer. He was 18 years old at the time and he had heard the news. He made his way to Dunkirk. You must know where Dunkirk is. There was a movie also called Dunkirk. And he was trying to find a way to get on a boat to go to England. There was a lot of people leaving at that point. And he saw a bunch of Polish soldiers on the beach. And between all the air raids and everything else, he saw they were trying to do laundry or something. And he had snuck up behind some sand dunes and he stole one of their uniforms, quickly put it on. And when there was a ship that was taking Polish soldiers to London, he jumped on the line and just walked up the plank and stayed on the boat till they got close to the Dover in England. At that point, they were getting suspicious of him. And he just literally jumped off the boat, swam ashore, and he stayed in England the rest of the war. So it was 5 years where his parents didn't know, we didn't know anything that happened to him till the war almost ended. His parents and some of our other relatives, we got separated through all the bombings and everything. Quite a few of them somehow or other made it to Cuba and Argentina, but basically to Cuba. And they stayed there for quite a long time. Some stayed even until Castro came, but most of them managed to get to America as the war was coming to an end. Our story, we made it over to the Spanish border. They wouldn't let us through. They would let my mother and my two brothers and I through, but not my father because he was of army age. He was told by somebody in the Belgian consulate to go to Morocco and to call his brother in America there. His brother, my uncle, was living in America for quite a while at this point, excuse me. And he was a very successful man. He had a business in the Philippines as well as in China of textiles. So once he got to Morocco, he got hold of his brother. And did I lose everybody?
Yeah.
Am I on? I haven't touched anything. Can you hear me, Marty?
Yes, but we did lose your face.
Can you get my face back
Mark?
on? Let me see if is it me or is it?
No, it's us.
No.
Okay, I won't touch anything.
There
I
you
can
go.
continue talking. Okay, it wasn't that secret. Are we okay now, guys?
Yes, you're getting your father out of Spain, into Spain.
Right, right. And we were, he was in Morocco, we were in Spain, and we get a telegram from the Belgian embassy there that we should send a cable to my father in Morocco saying that the 3 children are very, very ill. Please come immediately. My mother was very hesitant to do that. It was like a kind of horror, you know, you don't wish that, but she did. Nothing happened. It took 2 more cables and said, come, you must come immediately. The children are very sick. They let him through finally. Of course, a few diamonds were lost in the wave, you know what I'm talking about. And we were in Spain. We managed to get on a train that was going to Portugal. And from Portugal, my father's brother arranged a visitor's visa, temporary visa, for us to go to New York on a boat. On the train going to Portugal, it was horrible. There were hundreds and hundreds of people on the train, probably even more than that. And it was crowded. It was everybody trying to escape. So here we are, it's the middle of the night. We hadn't eaten. We had the clothes we were wearing when we left Antwerp, and just hoping to get to Portugal without being bombed or anything. Sitting down next to we were all standing, but sitting down right next to us was a man, and very quiet, didn't say anything. And a Belgian officer who was also standing there said to him, "Monsieur, qu'est-ce qu'il y a? Sir, what's wrong?" He said, "We know there's a war, but you can still be a gentleman. Please give the lady a seat so she can sit down with her 3 children." I mean, we were 4, 5, and 8 at the time. And he didn't answer. So some other soldiers were there also, and they said, again, "Monsieur, s'il vous plaît, he said, "No," he said, "I've got a bad leg. I can't walk." So the Belgian officer said to him, "Look, you've got choices. You can give the lady your seat. You can let the children sit on your lap, the 2 little boys, or I can shoot you and throw you off the train." So he said, "Okay," he said, "I'll take the 2 children on my lap." And that was it. Belgian soldier picked me up, put me on his lap. Then he picks up my brother and puts him on his other leg. And with that, just a little boy kicking, he kicked a man's leg. He had a transmitter of some sort hidden in his pants. He was a German spy. He was trying to notify the German Air Force, the German armed forces, where the train was. He was going to get off the next stop and let the train be bombed to Dickens. Of course, the Belgian soldiers immediately grabbed him to shut off the transmitter, took him outside and finished him deservedly. So hundreds of people could have been killed if it wasn't for one little kick from a little boy. Musseldick. We get to Portugal, and again, there were already Gestapo agents there. They were staring at us, and as all the other refugees, they were just waiting to get their hands on us. We tried to stay as far away from them as possible. But we managed to get on a boat coming to New York. I believe it was called a Siboney. It was very, very stormy. The boat was crowded like the Dickens. And we were told to be very, very careful. We had to wear life vests all along because there were German submarines in the area. Excuse me for 1 second, please. After a very rough voyage, we got to New York. Family was waiting for us. I was there, my father's brother and some other people. But you know who else was waiting there? State Department, the FBI, and some other security people. Expected. I mean, America was close to war with Germany, and they were checking everybody coming in. First thing they did was check our health to make sure that none of us were carrying any diseases. And then as we were going through immigration, they told us, "You cannot stay here." And my mother broke down crying, I remember. And my father said, "What do you mean we can't stay here? We're refugees. Belgium doesn't exist anymore. What do you want us to do?" Actually, they could care less. They said, "You can only stay here for a certain amount of time, which will be very short, probably a month or so, maybe less. And then you have to find another place, or we're going to send you back to Belgium."
Eric, it was
Yes, sir.
it was obvious why your father took the temporary visa just to get out of Europe. It was
Exactly right.
the best choice. Do you think he thought that once in America that he would be able to, with his connections, his brothers, be able to stay? Was he, you think, pretty surprised that they put up a stone wall?
I'm not so sure he was surprised. He was getting quite used to anti-Semitism. He was not a young kid who believed in fairy tales. There was no great love for the Jews anywhere. At the end, by the way, his father was killed in Auschwitz, my grandpa. I never saw my grandparents. I never saw my Bumpapa. I never had the honor of sitting on his lap, be told a story, get a hug from a Bumpapa. My mother was killed in her house. But here we are, we're in America, and my father was sure, though, that they would let us stay at the end. But no matter how many strings we pulled, they were told there's a quota. There was a lot of anti-Semitism in America there. And don't forget, World War I was not that far behind us. And most people didn't want to go through this again, another war with the Germans. So we were told we just had to be out. My father's brother, oldest brother, who had been in America for a while now, had textile mills in Shanghai and also in Manila, the Philippines. The Philippines was an American protectorate at that time. And it was under the guard of America through the Spanish-American War.
If I can interrupt you again.
No problem.
Thank you. So some people have wondered, and later you're going to tell us about some other related immigration issues in the Philippines, but did that affect your feelings on immigration through the years, being, told you can't stay here and you have to leave, regarding other refugees years later?
Well, yes, of course. Every time I see these stories, first of all, it brings back some pretty rough memories. When I see what happened in Syria with the Ghazis, how they were being slaughtered and used as slaves by the Syrians, when I see so many from Latin America trying to get over here, there's got to be a better way. This is a great country. I think two things have to be done. First of all, we have to help these countries to build so that people won't want to leave. There's no war. And for those coming to America, I think it's got to be done the right way. They've got to apply. Look, we came here in 1945 at the end of the war. I didn't become a citizen until 1957. It took a long, long process. We had no welfare, nothing like that at all. My father stood on his own 2 feet. He protected us. He sent us to school. My mother, who was so ill all the time, he made sure she had doctors. He made sure when it came time for college, my oldest brother, Jacques, was accepted to Brown University, again, under a quota, Jewish quota, which they had at that time. And then he had a master's and doctorate from Yale and University of Pennsylvania. We made it on our own. It was not easy. I really believe that we have to help anybody that needs help, one way or another, if not in their own country here or in other places. But I think the world has got to stop arming and start helping.
Before you take us to the Philippines, some people were wondering, when you were still in Europe, escaping, or even in Belgium, what news were you getting about the war, about the Nazis, about Jews and concentration camps? Where was information coming from?
There were a lot of so-called rumors which were too hard to believe. How does this guy with the mustache, his little Charlie Chaplin, get so many people to back him? He was voted in. And how could they be killing people left, right, and center? Jews, gypsies, gays. People didn't want to believe. And that was what happened with this couple that I told you about, where a woman was taken on a truck. My father said they never believed that the Germans would be so cruel. They're such a cultured people. Look, you got Freud, you got Beethoven, Mozart, so much genius came out of Germany. And yet look how it ended up. Look what they did. And then look at the 6 million Jews that were killed, 1.5 million children. Is it possible? It's not possible, but it happened. And all the other people that were killed. Maybe we would have had a cure for cancer now. Maybe we wouldn't have refugees coming from all countries trying to get to a safe place. It's such a tragedy. And I hope I hope, and this is why I keep talking, that something will change. Perhaps this virus that's going around now will make people rethink that there's more important things in life, that we should start to love each other a bit more and work together and make this a better world. Because boy, we sure messed it up.
Thank you. I think you were going to take us to Manila.
Manila, right. We got a boat to the Philippines. And when we got there, it was not long after my father reading the paper and hearing the news, hearing that talks were going on between Japan and the United States about certain territories, about oil, this, that. My father started getting very, very suspicious that something was going to happen, which was not going to be good. He thought that there was going to be a war with Japan. And people were saying, who's little Japan going to start a war with America? We'll wipe them out 1, 2, 3. But he listened to his gut, to his own conscience. And he went out and bought loads of canned goods, loads, as much as he could. You know, perhaps it would last us a week and 2 weeks in an emergency. And he brought them home. And for 4.5 years, he took these cans every week and he turned them over, and he turned them over once a week. If you take canned goods, carnation milk, canned foods, whatever, and you turn them over once a week or so, they will last. If you just let them stand, they'll get swollen and eventually they'll blow up and they're useless. And till our liberation, I think we still had most of the canned goods. But anyhow, we were in Manila. My father started getting us an apartment, and we were living fairly quietly. The news was bad. And my dad said, you know, we're really in trouble here because this is not Europe. We have no way to escape. We're not going to swim across the Pacific to try to get to America or Australia or anywhere else. It was not an easy time, but Manila was called the Pearl of the Orient. It's actually quite a beautiful place. And the Filipino people, which is just a little asterisk in the history books, you've got to know they are the most wonderful people you want to meet. And I don't think you'll ever find an Israeli who won't tell you the same thing. There's a wonderful relationship between Israel and the Philippines. The Filipino people were just terrific to the Jews. They welcomed us. They welcomed us with open arms, and they were so kind and so helpful. And as I continue my story, I'll tell you more about them. And it's just terrific. If anybody there is from the Philippines in your audience, I take my hat off to you and I hug you, and I will gladly speak into any church or any organization that you belong and tell you about the people that your relatives in the past and how wonderful they were. But anyhow,
Eric,
go ahead, Marty.
Before I introduce Congressman Raskin, can you talk about the president of the Philippines, Quezon, and
yes.
the rejection that
Yes.
the U.S., please, and then we'll go ahead.
Yes. The Philippines was an American protectorate, and a gentleman by the name of McNutt was Roosevelt's representative. Roosevelt was a Democrat. McNutt was a Republican from Indiana, I believe, and he was popular to run for president. So Roosevelt had to make a political choice, and he put him in charge of the Philippines to get him out of the way. And he was a very, very good man, a very nice man. And also at that time, some American military was in the Philippines, and in charge was General MacArthur, Douglas MacArthur. You may know the saying that he did, "I shall return," when he when he escaped from Manila. And also under him, believe it or not, was General Eisenhower, who later became commander of European forces and then became president of the United States. When all the rumors and stories were going around about what's going on in Europe, the president of the Philippines, very religious Catholic, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful man, like most Filipinos, he said to MacArthur, and they were having a card game or something, he said, "Is it true? Is it true what we hear about what's going on in Europe? about the refugees, about Jews being slaughtered, about gays and Romans being slaughtered. And Eisenhower and MacArthur told them, yes, from what we understand, they're building concentration camps all over, and they're putting Jews in, and they're all trying to get out before that, but they can't get anywhere. And Kazan said, well, why not bring them here? He said, you know what? Bring me 1 million Jews, bring me 1 million people, bring me 1 million refugees. We have Manila, the Philippines is a big place. Manila is a beautiful place. And he said the Jewish committee here will gladly be responsible. America wouldn't have to pay a penny. Bring as many Jews as you can to the Philippines. We'll settle them. We have Mindanao, we have Corregidor, Bataan, Baguio, we have Manila itself. They'll take care of themselves. They're good people, and we would welcome them with open arms. McNutt immediately went to the States. He was so excited about this. Eisenhower sent cables to Roosevelt. I think MacArthur did also. But McNutt went to America, and he spoke to Roosevelt, and he spoke to congressmen and senators there. They opened the door to the Philippines. Let the Jews come, as many as they can. And there was just so much anti-Semitism here in America also. The answer basically was no. There's a video film, actually. I'm holding it up here. Perhaps, I hope you can see it. And I believe it was made by members of your congregation about this story. I've also got a couple of books here, by the way. I'll just quickly show them to you. One is Escape to Manila. This little boy that you see there, he made it. He wrote this book, and a good part of it is on our family and what my father did and all that, what we did. And then there's another book. All these can be gotten through Amazon, by the way. There's another book written by a professor from the University of Pennsylvania called Escape or Die, and has a story in there, which I'll tell you about my brother and I with a Nazi in Manila. So what was the question, Marty? I'm sorry.
No, I asked you to talk about this. Most of us had no idea about the United States government rejecting, because they controlled Philippines' external affairs.
Exactly.
And rejecting could have saved 1 million lives.
Yes. Can you just imagine, let's say even 400,000 people, 500,000, 100,000 people entering the Philippines in 1940, 41. Can you just imagine how big that population was? Maybe the person who, the greatest pianist in the world, could have been there. Maybe Freud could have been there. Maybe so many others could have been there, and it didn't happen. Instead, their ashes are all over the camps.
Did you want to tell us more about your father's experience in the Philippines, being arrested, bristles?
Yes, I'll go on with that. December 7th, 19. Did you want to have the congressman talk first, or do you want me to?
You can talk for 2 more minutes, then we'll bring him on. He likes listening to you. Okay,
I'm sure I'll enjoy listening to him and look forward to meeting him also. We have a mutual friend, Joanna Bergson. Anyway, Japanese came in and they bombed the dickens out of Manila to a point where MacArthur declared it an open city, which means that they wouldn't try to fight back against the Japanese. They would let them take over the city, but Japanese had to stop the bombing and the killing. We used to lie down on the ground, putting pencils in our mouth, because the concussion from bombing could break your teeth. And if you have a pencil like this in your mouth, you'll bite into the pencil, but you won't break your teeth. And the Japanese came in very, very cruel. But remember, that's their culture. Compare it to the Germans, you can't, because the Japanese are an Eastern culture. The Germans are a Western culture, supposed to be like America, supposed to be brilliant. The Japanese, as cruel as they were, it was almost accepted that they were treated us like they treated their own, very, very badly. Japanese came in, they rounded us all up, and they put us in a place called St. Thomas. St. Thomas, Santa Tomas was a university in Manila, a very well-respected university. And like all wars, all good is killed and all bad comes up. They turned it into a prison camp. We were all there. We were lying in tents. We had very little food. We were already getting sick. Here's my parents with 3 little children. We're lying on the ground. This went on for quite a long while. And then one day my father heard somebody outside talking in English, a Japanese officer. And he quickly went out and he bowed very low. You've got to bow low to the Japanese, especially to an officer, or you lose your head. And he said, you know, sir, I don't know why you're keeping us here. We are Belgium nationals. We are Belgium citizens. We're not at war with Japan. We're just coming through here, through the Philippines, and that's it. We have no fight with Japan. And he looked at my father and spoke some English, and he said, I'll get back to you. And he did a few days later. And he said, look, I saw your passports. I believe you are Belgian nationals, but you're still an enemy alien. But I'll make a situation with you. We know that you are involved in the bristle business. We'll let you and your family go. You can go back to your apartment, but you are going to have to get 100 Filipinos, which we'll probably send to you or you'll just get. And you're going to have to be responsible for cleaning all Japanese weapons, their rifles, their cannons, whatever they have, with your bristles that you have. And that's your choice. Either you work with us or. My father understood what the or was. That would mean that he would have his head chopped off, and so would we. Again, you know, he had no choices. He said, okay. They let us out of the prison camp. We made our way back to our apartment. My father said, we're being followed. And there were some Filipinos not too far from us. They followed us through. And as we got to our apartment, one of the Filipinos waved to my father to come to him. My father didn't know what to do. It was war. We didn't know if there were guerrillas that were going to kill him or what. But he pushed us up to our apartment, and then he crossed over and started talking to them. They said, look, we know what the Japanese are offering you. We understand your situation. But how can you help us? You've got to know my dad. He was so brilliant. He said, you know, I've been thinking all the way home how I can help you. And I'll tell you what. He said, they want me to make all the equipment to clean their weapons. I can make it. I can give them the rods with the bristles at the end so they can clean their rifles and their cannons and all and put the cloth in afterwards. But nothing says I can't make it a little bit loose so that after a few weeks or a month or so, it gets stuck in the barrel. And when the weapon is fired, it'll either blow up in their face or it will misfire. Well, that started a friendship for life with these guerrillas, these Filipinos, these wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people. And that's exactly what my father did. They left us alone for quite a while. And during this period, my brother and I, we had no real schooling. There was a Catholic French school not too far from us called La Salle. My 2 brothers went for a while. I was really a bit young to go. But when my father felt so bad for us that he took a piece of wood and he found some roller skates somewhere and he attached it to the wood. And he said, here, you have like a skateboard. Go out and play and have fun.
Eric, I'm going to ask you to hold off for a minute.
Sure.
And when you return, you can talk about the garbage truck. But we're going to ask Congressman Raskin. It's a great pleasure that I ask him to speak. We're very thrilled that he's participating in this program. So,
I'm honored.
Okay, Congressman.
Well, Rabbi, thank you very much. What an honor it is to be with you and all my friends from Beth Shalom and Kol Ami, and to listen to Eric. I got to hear Eric's whole story in another video that somebody made. It's like maybe an hour and 15 or 20 minutes. And it's just so moving beyond words, Eric, to hear you tell your story. And with the rabbi's permission, I thought maybe I could ask you a couple questions. Is that okay?
With pleasure, Congressman.
So, look, what we're you spent a lot of your childhood in hiding and in hot pursuit of various fascists and authoritarians. And today, we're not in hiding and nobody is chasing us down to try to kill us, but we're in quarantine and we're confined also. And I'm wondering if you might give some advice to people about how we can best use our time in this situation to improve the lot of our communities and humanity.
Thank you for that, because I was thinking about that this morning, actually, and talking to my wife about it. We've been talking about this for a long time. My wife was from England and she was evacuated during the war, so she's aware of what can happen. I tell you, for us, this has not been exactly a difficult time. We've got a nice house. We've got food on the table. We've got air conditioning in hot Florida. We've got drinking water. There's nobody bombing us. There's nobody shooting at us. And as they say, nicht gefährlich, we'll survive this. We'll manage. We have our grandchildren here who we get to see. We have grandchildren in New York, who I believe are watching this also, and my son and his wife there. They're managing. She's a chemistry teacher and she teaches through the computer also. And my son is on Wall Street and luckily he can work from home. My daughter here works from home and so does my son-in-law, who's with AT&T. And, you know, I don't suffer. And I tell people, we'll get through this. We'll survive this. It's a lesson to be learned. Maybe we have to start thinking a different way. Maybe we all have to learn that we should get to the UN and stop fighting with each other and start doing for everybody, so there won't be any more wars, so we can help each other. We have so much excess. There's so much excess in the world. And then there's also so much starvation in the world and so much hate. It's got to stop once and for all. And maybe this is the lesson. I don't know. I hope so.
Well,
Go ahead, sir.
Let me follow up, and that's a beautiful statement. I had so many questions listening to your story, and one of them is about education, because you were deprived of formal schooling for most of your childhood, I think, until you were liberated and rescued and you got to the United States. And one of the things you pointed out is that we have this explosion of barbarism and fascism from one of the world's most educated and civilized societies in Germany. And what have you thought about what we should teach kids and what education should consist of? So we're learning science and math and so on, but we're also improving the moral condition of humanity.
What I think, honestly, is that we should teach our children love right from the beginning, and that it's a good world. We should teach them respect. And honestly, I would, if I was in charge of education for any government, there were two programs I would put in from kindergarten on. One would be yoga. They should learn yoga because it brings beauty into your life. And they should learn Tai Chi, which is another form. And I think you would be amazed, because I've seen it, how good, and it's also done in prisons now, I understand. It changes your character. It makes you think of what's important. And I think teaching ethics at a very young age will teach these children how important it is, if there's a child who's left out, that they should friend him, not defriend him. They should bring him into all activities, that they should encourage him. And if a child is slow in learning, like I was, very much so, not to be thrown out of the group, but to help them, that there should be groups that help each other. Maybe make it like a color warring that they have in camps. You know, who's going to be the best in math? Our group, your group, this group. But they should have love for each other. And I tell you, I think learning yoga and Tai Chi, things like that, are just could do wonders.
Well, I appreciate that, and I've taken too much time, but I
Not
hope
at
I
all.
can meet you in person in better days, and I have 1,000 more questions for you, but I think you found your true calling as a teacher of young people and a teacher of families and grown-ups too. So thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much, Congressman. Look forward to meeting you.
Thank you, Congressman.
My pleasure.
Thank
Stay
you.
safe.
Eric, we're going to get you back on track. And I
Okay.
think we're going to have you back in Manila and the things that you and your brothers were doing with your father. I think I remember very well because you talked about the garbage truck and the smell.
Yeah. Well, let me get a little bit before that. I told you my dad made this rollerboard, like skateboard for us. And my brother and I were out in the street. And prior to that, you know, we were under Japanese occupation already. There was one Japanese officer that we used to see a lot of, and his name Muna. And he liked my brother and I, and we used to say hello to him all the time. And a few times he called us over, and he had pictures of his family in Japan that he showed us and all that. So even among the enemy, and you know, I'm using the word enemy, but there are good people everywhere. And Muna, to us, was very kind. He wasn't a very gentle person or kind person when it came to other people. He liked my brother and I for some reason, but I saw him torture some people, which I don't even want to get into here right now. But we said hello to him. We had the skateboard and we're going down the street. It was probably somewhere around midday, another hot day in Manila. And all of a sudden, out of a house that had a swastika hanging from it, a man comes out and he pushes my brother and I to the ground. And he says, "You filthy little Jew bastards, what do you think you're doing on my street? Get out of here." And with that, he took the skateboard, he pushed us again. We fell on the ground. He said, "I know who you are. I know who your parents are. All of you we're going to be taken care of. You were going to be put where all the other Jews are." We didn't know what the heck he was talking about. You know, I mean, my mother gave us a bath in the morning. Why is he saying we're so dirty? What's he so angry? So, you know, we were crying. We started to walk home, and who's standing on the corner? Muna, the Japanese officer. And he sees us and he waves us to come over to him. And we did, and we know we didn't speak Japanese except for a few words, and he didn't speak English, but we got through to him what happened. And with that, he blows a whistle, and out of one of the buildings there comes about a dozen Japanese soldiers, rifles, fixed bayonets. They thought maybe it was a guerrilla attack or something. And Muna's talking to them in Japanese, and the next thing I know, they're surrounding us. We didn't know exactly what was going on, but Muna was our friend. We weren't particularly concerned. But my mother, who was upstairs in the apartment, saw us and thought they were going to kill us, that we were going to be cannon fodder. But we waved to her, and you know, she kind of smiled, but she wasn't sure what was going on. Anyway, Muna marched us down to this fellow's house, this Nazi. And he's talking to the Japanese soldiers, and then the soldiers take us, they push us to the front of their line. And with that, with their rifles, they're banging on this door. The German opens. And you got to understand, the Germans and Japanese, although they became allies towards the end of the war, they did not exactly like each other. The Germans really looked down on the Japanese. They called them little monkeys. And the Japanese did not like the Germans at all because of the way they acted and everything. So the Japanese point to the skateboard that's lying on the floor. The German was scared stiff. He never expected this. And he pats my brother on the head. And he said, okay, good boy. And he gives him the skateboard. Well, with that, my brother had a bit of a temper, but he's a good fella, good fella. And with that, my brother smacks the German right in the face. And the Japanese soldiers thought it was the funniest thing they ever saw. And they're laughing and laughing. He didn't know what to do. I think if he could have killed us right there and then, it would have been the greatest pleasure of his life. But what could he do? There were a dozen Japanese soldiers right there, and they were laughing. So his wife comes down at the front door also, picks up his glasses, puts them on, and hands me the skateboard. And I start to go down the steps, and he says, yes, good boy. He was so afraid of the Japanese. And my brother said, did he hit you? I said, no, he just went like that. And my brother said, that's enough. My brother turned around and whacked him again, right in the face. And he fell down on the ground. I mean, my brother was pretty strong. And with that, the Japanese were rolling. I don't know what they were saying, but they were rolling. They couldn't stop laughing so much. He didn't know what to say or what to do. I could see the way he was looking at us. There was so much hate in his eyes. The hell with him. And Muna walked us down the stairs, and we started to go home. And Muna said, no, you don't go home. He told one of the Japanese soldiers to stand guard in front of this German's house. And he said to us, he made us understand. He said, I want you here every day going up and down on the rollerboard in front of his house, which we did for the longest time. Time goes by. Life was getting more and more difficult. Things were beginning to change a bit. The Battle of Midway came, where the Americans had managed to take the Japanese codes and decipher them. And they ambushed a whole Japanese fleet, which was really the turn of the war after that. When the planes were up in the air, the Americans bombed the aircraft carriers, and the planes had absolutely nowhere to land after that.
Eric?
Yes, sir.
I have to say, some of the things that you mentioned really hit home. Taking you back to the hacienda, where your father had to decide how to reinforce it for shelter.
Yeah,
and you're talking about building 5 shelters or 1.
Yes.
Talk about that.
Are we running out of time? Because I'm getting to that.
Well, people can take, cut off anytime they want.
Okay.
You're
okay.
fine.
Let me get to that. I'll tell you about with the garbage truck. Now, your time is going by. These things were turning a little bit towards the American side, the Allies. And on one day, my father took my 2 brothers and I to Manila Bay to see, which we went fairly often prior to the war, to see the sunset, the most beautiful sunsets on Dewey Boulevard, Manila Bay. And whilst we were walking there were very few other people there. And also my father said, there's something not right here, something just not right. And we start walking, and before he knew it, a bunch of trucks pull up all around, and they rounded everybody up. Thank you. Everybody up who was standing there, who was anywhere near there. And my father said, oh my gosh, he's told me, he said, what am I going to do? 3 little children, they're not going to wait. They're not to see, oh, the poor man with 3 little, they're just going to kill us right there and then. There was a garbage truck, not maybe 50, 100 feet from us, I don't remember. A couple of Filipinos were there, and they go like this to my father, get over here, get over here. And my father couldn't move because the Japanese were beginning to surround us. One of them snuck through the lines, and he quickly told my father, we can't save you, but we can save the kids. And they grabbed us and they threw us into the garbage truck. They knew that the Japanese soldiers wouldn't come in search of garbage truck because it smelled so bad. They threw us in and they slowly drove off. They were Filipino guerrillas, of course. They took us home. They took my father into one of the worst prisons. Excuse me 1 second. And we went upstairs, and my mother opened the door, and she says, oh my goodness, you smell so bad, and where's your father? But we told her, and of course she started crying, and we started crying. She cleaned us up a bit, And we sat there. My father was taken to one of the worst prisons they are. Usually when you go there, you don't come out. Excuse me 1 second. Glass of the chai.
Good.
So my father's in this prison and put him in a cell by himself, which was worse. He figured they had something on him. Maybe it was with the guerrillas or what, he wasn't sure. Nighttime comes and he sees that the guard by his cell, and he was the only one in there, was a heavy smoker. The Japanese in general were very heavy smokers. My father smoked also, and he had his last pack of Camels in his pocket. The only time a cigarette did save some lives. And he says to the Japanese soldier, he holds it up and he says, "You want it? You want it?" And the Japanese soldier, his eyes lit up. And he says, "Yes, yes." My father says, "Open the lock. Just let me out." So the Japanese soldier, thinking he's very bright, said, "Wait till it gets a bit darker and I'll open up the lock," which he did. And he tells my father to run, because his thinking was that once my father's out of the cell, he can say, "Oh, he escaped, shoot him." My father was too smart for that. He gave him the cigarettes and casually walked out right through the Japanese soldiers. So they thought that he was, I don't know, one of them or working with them or what. And it wasn't until he got to a really safe place that he ran home. There was such a balagan there, such a mess over there in the prisons that nobody knew what was going on. And that he saved himself, and he probably saved our lives also by that escape. Marty, you have another question for me, or you want me to go on?
Yeah, I was, when you talked about, they told you it wasn't safe anymore to be in the apartment.
That's what I'm getting to now.
Okay.
Excuse me. A bit more time went by. And again, I was out for a walk with my father and my two brothers. And when we come back in to the apartment building, apartment right next door to us, we didn't think anybody was living there. All of a sudden opens up. And what's there? Big swastika, big German flag. And a man comes out and he goes like this to my father, "Come here." Dad thought, well, that's it. You know, they're rounding us up. That's going to be the end for all of us. He pushed us into the apartment, into our apartment. And he goes in, comes out about 20 minutes later, goes into the apartment. And he said, "You know," and he was so right, "there are good people everywhere, even among the enemy." Just like Muna was for us, this man said to my father, "Listen," he said, "I'm going to be here." He was some kind of a baron or something, very highly educated man. He said, "I'm here with the German embassy now." And he said, "Things are going to get very bad. First of all, the Japanese are going to take over this building and you're going to have to be out of here very, very quickly. Gestapo is probably going to come in here also, Germans. And once they see you, they want the Japanese to round up all the Jews, and that's going to be the end. My advice to you," he says, "I'm not an anti-Semite. I think what's going on in Germany is terrible." And he said, "I want to tell you, I want to do something good, and I want to tell you, get out of here and get out of here as quick as you can." The very
Eric?
next, yes, sir.
So you experienced the Nazi cruelty back in Belgium. They threw the woman's babies off the truck, and nothing could describe it more than that. And here you have another German acting very differently. Did that help? Did that affect any of your thinking overall to German people?
You know, I was a child. I wasn't thinking a good German, a good Jap. I was just trying to survive. We were all very sick. We had hardly any food. We were just trying to survive. And my father told me, know where you go, know how to get out, know how to survive, know how to get back home. I didn't have time for philosophical thinking at this point. My only thought was, like my brothers, you've got to survive. And there was a time when I wasn't sure I was going to, and I just thought this was part of life, and I'll see you in another world or whatever. I wasn't scared.
Thank you.
So anyhow, the guerrillas, Filipinos, got us a wagon and a couple of what they call carabaos, those are big oxen. and they moved us more towards the jungle. And there was an old Spanish house over there. I don't know if it was a factory before or a big house or what. Very, very thick walls. If you see any Spanish buildings, or even I believe in Mexico, you see that big thick walls. And they said you should be relatively safe here till the war ends, maybe another year, 2 years, whatever it is. But the walls are very thick, and even with the bombardments, just don't let yourself be seen by too many Japanese because you know what can happen. So we moved in there, and it's just about the time where things started getting hot again. We actually saw American planes, P-38s, fighters, like flying over. Oh boy, another year or two, and the Yanks will be here. The Yanks will come, they'll save us. Things actually got worse. The Japanese got crueler, and it was just a matter of survival. I got very ill. I don't know if it's something I ate or something that bit me. I blew up like a balloon. I had terrible rashes. There were no doctors. I just laid in my parents' bed, and I heard them talking, and it wasn't exactly a positive conversation, but I made it. I made it. And I think I got my strength from my father and my mother. My poor mother, she went through hell, and everything in her life was for the kindler, for the children, But it just got to be a point of how much longer can we make it? Bombings were just terrible. And at one point, there was my father took my oldest brother and I out, and we were walking on the street just to get some fresh air, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a dog comes out, bites my brother, a rabid dog. What are you going to do? My father brought my brother home. Luckily, it only bit my brother, and we knew it was a rabid dog. Father managed again with the Filipinos. There were no doctors around, but somehow or other they got a doctor, but he insisted that my father come to him, and then bring him back to our house. My brother wasn't allowed to move, which we did. At that time, it wasn't 3-4 injections like now. It was 20 injections, 20 days. My father had to somehow get out of the house, get to this Filipino doctor who had rabies injections, anti-rabies, and bring him over to where we were, and then bring him back to where he was, and then come home again. My brother fortunately survived painfully. And then again, I was in the kitchen one day, just my mother and I don't remember where my father and my brothers were. It was a very hot day. My mother was doing a bit of ironing. I don't know what she was ironing, but there was no electricity. You put hot charcoals in the iron, and then you used it. And we hear the gate where we're living open. And I said, Papa, you see, my father is home. And my mother immediately said, no, that's not your father's footsteps. And sure enough, who walks right into where we are? A drunken Japanese soldier, fixed bayonet. He looks at me, he looks at my mother, and my mother says to me in French, don't move. No matter what happens, don't move. Now, I had no idea, I was just a little boy, what rape or anything like that was, but I knew this fellow was up to no good. I had so much hate in my heart at that point. I just stared at him, and he came to me, and he went like this with his rifle, trying to push me. I just stared at him, and my mother kept saying, don't be afraid, don't move. Don't cry, don't be afraid, don't move. I just stared him down. Then he walked over to my mother, and I figured, that's it. How can I kill him? I just wanted to kill him. That's all. I had nothing. I'm just a little skinny little boy, 6. My mother takes the iron, hot iron, and shoves it right 2 inches from his face. And he looks at my mother, and he's grunting. He's dead drunk. He smells bad. And he goes back to me, and with his rifle again, he tries to push me away. My mother kept saying in French, don't move, don't be afraid. just look at him, just stare back at him. And with that, he started to walk to my mother again. My mother lifted the iron. He grunted, turned around, and walked away. Thank goodness for that. Of course, we both had a good cry after that. Bombings, bombing, more bombing. Yanks can't be too far away. Maybe another 6 months, maybe another year. My two brothers and I went outside after one of the bombings, and there was a church not too far from us where the steeple was knocked down, but we thought we would climb up, and there's a cat running around here, that's why I keep turning. We climbed up, and we thought from the steeple we could see parts of Manila and Manila Bay and the Pasig River, which goes around Manila. We get to the top, like crazy kids, we should never have done that. And we looked outside, angels from heaven, the other side of the river, American soldiers. The Yanks were there. The Yanks were here, the Yanks were here. We could see the flag, we could see the tanks, thousands of soldiers right across the river, ready to cross over. The joy of seeing an American flag. We quickly went down, we ran home, said, Mama, an American, you see? The parents looked at us and said, no, it's going to be at least another few months, a year. He said, no, they're here, Mama. As we're talking, we hear rumbling in the streets. And we hear noise. My father said, oh my gosh, the Japs are trying to escape with their tanks. We better go get inside before they see us. I said, no, look. And there it was on top of one of the tanks, the American flag. God bless America. And they stopped and they looked at us. The lead jeep was a man named Colonel Hall. I'll tell you about if we have time. And he said, my gosh, who are you? What happened to you? What's going on? And he stopped and he saw how we were half starved. And he told his sergeant, empty out one of the food trucks. I mean, there were literally thousands of soldiers there, hundreds of trucks, stopped the whole convoy. And Colonel Hall, he was also, I believe, a doctor. Can you excuse me for just 1 second? And my parents told him the story. And with that, some of the soldiers came around also. One of the soldiers puts his arm around me. Now remember, first of all, in the 4.5 years that we were in Manila, almost 5, we lost count of what real food is. At one point, my father got chicken somewhere. It laid 1 egg, 4.5 years. It laid 1 egg and then dropped dead. My mother boiled this egg to hard boil, cut 5 slices, and that was the biggest treat you can ever imagine. And that was it. And here, all this food coming out of trucks being brought to us. And I didn't know what an orange was. I didn't know what good steak was, or meat, or anything. And the soldier comes, young soldier, and he puts his arm around me and he says, would you like a baby Ruth? And I looked at him and I said to Mama, I tell my mother, Mama, Lipetz, he wants to give me his baby Ruth. What am I going to do with his baby? I didn't know it was a chocolate. And of course, he started laughing and he told me the story. And he gave me his baby Ruth. Now I tell you, wherever I go, I see a baby Ruth. Good memory of wonderful soldiers. There was one other incident which very much stays in my mind just before the soldiers came. One of the American planes was shot down. I don't know if it was by anti-aircraft or by a Japanese plane. And we saw the parachute going down. And I said to my brother, let's go. Let's see if we can help him, hide him. And we ran out because we saw it wasn't too far from where we were. And we get there were already some Filipinos around there. And I said to my brother, come on, come on. We'll pick him up and we'll take him home. I can still see his young face with his pilot thing on. He's just lying there. And I said to my brother, why doesn't he want to come with us? Bring him. And then the Filipinos said, get out, get out, get out. The Japanese are coming. They quickly took his revolver and they ran. And my brother says, come, we've got to run home. I said, no, I want to pick him up. With that, one of the Filipinos had turned him over. There was nothing left of him in the back. He was shot through and through. He was dead. And you know, I have his face in my mind all the time. And if only I knew who he was, if only I could, even at this stage, tell his grandchildren, if he had children, he was a young boy, maybe 19, 20 at that, but his family, somebody in his family, yes, I saw him. Yes, he was so brave. Yes, if it wasn't for him, we could be dead. Just to say thank you. Just like now, I would love to go one of these days, to make a trip to the Philippines, just to go to the graves of all the soldiers, say Kaddish, say a prayer for all of them, just to say thank you. And we were in England a few years ago. We went to the American cemetery there by the university. And I was able to say Kaddish and a prayer for all the soldiers who were there and say thank you. If you look at the grave sites, these are young children. What can be worse for a parent than to lose a child? And here, all these young babies, and they died so that you and I, all of us, can sit here today. I in the comfort in Florida, you in your homes, and we can talk, and we're free. And we've got to change things. We've got to do good. We've got to teach our children to do good. We've got to teach them respect for the flag, respect for the country, and to help to make this a better world. And I think maybe we've learned a lesson with this virus. Perhaps we will. But for sure, I'll tell you one thing. I will never stop talking. I will talk to any group, any individual, and tell them the story and hope that they will also make this a better world. And I really, really appreciate you listening. Liz, I hope you're there also. And thank you, Marty. Thank you so much.
Eric, can you just tell us when you went about your family today, children, wife, grandchildren?
Yes, I have 5 grandchildren now. I'm in my daughter's house now in Florida. So she has 3 girls. 2 of them were already bat mitzvah, getting ready for the 3rd. And my oldest son is in Long Island, New York. Old Beth Page was his lovely wife, who's a most wonderful teacher and has arranged many, many talks for me at the schools in New York. And they have twins, a boy and a girl. And they're going to be bar mitzvah in October, hopefully in New York as well as in Israel. We had another son who was very, very bright also. He was at Rutgers University. He was brilliant in mathematics, loved music, and loved to cook, absolutely loved sports, and was working and living out in California. One day we get a phone call from the state police saying, sorry, Joshua Lipetz, your son? Yes. You better come to San Diego because there was a terrible incident. I said, what? My wife said, what happened? Apparently he was playing basketball and all of a sudden he had a seizure. And I said, not my son, he's so big and strong. We made our way to California immediately.
It's a sign.
And he was at Scripps. And the surgeon told us they did a CAT scan and he had a brain tumor as big as a grapefruit. Glioma, it's called. Not much chance after that, but he fought for 3 years. We brought him back to New York, but that was it. And I got to tell you, of all the experiences I've had, all that we've gone through, There's nothing more painful and nothing worse than losing a child. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get into all that.
No, thank you for sharing
My-
your life, your family's experiences, and we know how difficult that can be. You mentioned your difficult adjustment when you first were in the United States and going to school. It sounds very much like you've adjusted very well. You become
Thank you.
very accomplished, a very wonderful family, and we look forward to your visit in November, in the fall. We hope when things.
I hope so also.
Yeah, and you get to celebrate your grandkids'
Yes,
bonuses.
yes,
So
yes.
it's been a
yes.
pleasure knowing and meeting you. I know I speak for everybody online. Thank you very much from the bottom of our hearts.
Thank you, all of you, for being here, for listening, and just be happy, do good things. All the young people, don't forget to hug your parents and your grandparents. And
My grandkids call it an air hug.
an air hug.
An
Okay,
air
fair
hug.
enough.
They stand in one place and I'm in the other, and we move our hands and we get an air hug.
That's good. Ivy, thank you for being here. Lior, toda rabah. And all of you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And Marty will be talking also.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Be safe. Be
We will.
safe.